Hi, I'm Claire, and this is my reading wrap-up for April 2017. I read 5 full-length things in April, and the first of those was The Collapsing Empire by John Scalzi, and oh my goodness, did I love this. This is the first volume in a new series that Scalzi is doing called The Interdependency, and it's a space opera about a world in which this empire of many planets are linked together by their method of interplanetary travel, which is called the flow. The only problem is that the flow is breaking down and the flow streams are moving away from their current positions, meaning that soon all of the planets will be separated from one another and people won't be able to be interdependent as per the title of the series. We follow a physicist called Mars who has evidence of this breaking down in the flow, and he's trying to bring it to the capital of this empire, to the powers that be, so that someone can do something about it. We also follow the Lady Kiva, who is the heir and representative to a really powerful trading house in this world, and she stumbles upon a plot, a conspiracy by another trading house to seize power, and she has to figure out how to counter them and make sure that her family comes out on top. And our third main protagonist is Cardinia, the new emperor of these worlds, as she is figuring out that the breakdown in the flow is a thing that's going to happen under her watch, and she has to deal not only with that but also secrets, lies, treasons, conspiracies, and just how to govern this empire which is falling apart. I loved this book. I know some people have complained about the ending of it being a little abrupt, but for me it really felt more like a dun 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 kind of a feeling where I cannot wait for the sequel. I thought this was just perfect. There's a great mix of science and politics at the heart of the premise of the book, and those are both things that I really enjoyed reading about in sci-fi, and I've really enjoyed everything that I've read of John Scalzi so far, but this I thought was the absolute best and my favorite. I just loved all the characters and I cannot wait for the next book. The next 2 books that I read were for Sisterhood of the Traveling Paperbacks, which is a book club podcast I do with Kay, who is over at KTaylorRay on Twitter, and Chelsea, who is over at The Reading Outlaw here on YouTube. I will leave a link to the podcast in the description below if you want to go and check out my thoughts about both of these books in a little bit more depth, and please do yell at me in the comments if I forgot to link the podcast, because I seem to do that a lot. The first of these 2 books was The Lawrence Brown Affair by Cat Sebastian. This is a male-male Regency romance, and I absolutely loved it. We follow Lawrence, the Earl of Radnor, a brilliant scientist who has secluded himself in his family's crumbling estate and is refusing to venture into the outside world or even to talk to the remaining 2 servants that are in his decaying household. Our other protagonist is Georgie Turner, a swindler and a con man who has to get out of London pretty quickly because some bad people are after him, and so he takes the first job that he can find, which is that an acquaintance of Lawrence, the Earl of Radnor, hires him to be the Earl's personal secretary so that he can figure out whether the Earl really is mad, as most people in the village nearby seem to think. And of course, sparks fly. This was utterly delightful. There are lies and secrets to unravel. Lawrence and Georgie do some really cool science stuff together. There are some really great conversations about mental illness in this book, and I rooted for the characters to be happy in whatever shape that took for them every single step of the way. Moreover, I had no doubt at any point that the way for them to be happy was to be together. This was probably my favorite romance novel that I've ever read. Admittedly, I haven't read a lot in the genre, but this really made an impression. There is a kind of prequel novel that features one of the minor characters from this book, and there's also a sequel coming out next year that also features a minor character from this book, and I cannot wait. I am just on board for all of it. Next, I read Last Call at the Nightshade Lounge by Paul Kruger, and this is a new adult urban fantasy novel. We follow Bailey Chen as she moves back home to her parents' place after college, and she's trying to find a job so she can start a career when she is attacked by a literal hell beast. Which incidentally is also when she finds out from her childhood best friend Zane that there is a secret group of bartenders fighting the forces of evil using magical cocktails that give them superpowers. This was a really fun premise and I liked the book overall. I enjoyed the characters and the humor in particular, but I thought the pacing was kind of off. This is a fairly short novel. It is only, 270 pages, but it also has a lot of kind of interstitial stuff, recipes for cocktails, and kind of historical notes about that world in the middle. Those bits are really great to read, but they do subtract from the page count that can be allocated to the story, and so for me I thought it was a bit too quick, but I'm really looking forward to trying some of the recipes in this book. Next, I read Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah, who is the host of The Daily Show. And I picked this up because I heard the main premise of this book, which is that Trevor Noah was born in the final years of apartheid in South Africa. His mother is black and his father is white, and so as per the title of the book, when he was born, his parents' relationship and his own existence were illegal, which just is kind of mind-boggling to think about when you're from a different place in the world. He talks about life in South Africa under apartheid and then in the immediate post-apartheid era, and as you can imagine, it's kind of upsetting, but it's also a really fascinating look at institutionalized racism, at how systems are put in place to divide people and put them in different categories and how that functioned. There was a lot in there about language as a tool to keep people apart, but also something that can bring people together, which I found really interesting. I also listened to the audiobook, which was read by Trevor Noah himself, so whenever he talked about a certain language, he would be able to speak in that language, and you as the reader would be able to hear that, which I thought was fascinating because I am a huge language nerd. But also this book was really well written and really funny because, well, Trevor Noah. And finally, I read Monsterous Volume 1 Awakening by Sana Takeda and Marjorie Liu. This is a gorgeous secondary world fantasy. There's this Art Deco steampunk vibe to the art that I absolutely love. We follow Micah, a teenager who is kind of struggling to survive in the aftermath of war, and she shares this weird psychic connection with this tremendously powerful monster kind of demon-y thing, which gives her strength and protects her, but also is kind of threatening to take her over. I really enjoyed this book. As I mentioned before, the art is just utterly gorgeous. I mean, I am a big fan of the illustrations by Sana Takeda and just the general kind of vibe of this book. It is quite violent. I'm trying to find a page without blood and it's a bit difficult. Here's a page with wolves! This was quite long for a graphic novel. I don't know if the first issue of the comic book was a double issue or something like that, but it did seem to take like a good third of the full volume, which collects the first 6 issues. This is a really rich, detailed story with intricate world building, and I really felt like there was a lot of kind of history and nuance to figure out as I was reading. I think this is probably something that would benefit from being reread, not necessarily now, but maybe when a few more volumes are out and I've read a bit more and I know a bit more about the world, going back and looking at what it is that I missed in the first few issues of this might be really interesting. For now, I really want to continue with the story when the second volume comes out, but I won't deny that I'm a bit confused about all the stuff that's going on because there is so much packed into this one small volume. So that's it. These were the things that I read in April. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of them, or if you have any recommendations for me based on the things that I talked about in this video. If you'd like to see more from me, you can check out a previous video over here, and if you haven't yet, you can hit that subscribe button that's on my face right here for more videos from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.